Hey, what is happening, my fearless networking friend? Todd Falcone here. Welcome back to another episode in this series that we're doing on prospecting mastery, which I don't know. I think it's an important thing to be good at the single most important activity that leads to revenue in network marketing. So, all right. So let's talk about today's subject, which is recording to break records, essentially, right? So what does that mean? Kind of being, I don't know, goofy or creative in a couple of these post titles. So one of the things that I think will be a super opportunity for you to make improvements is to see what you look like or hear how you sound after you've done it, okay? This is like when I look back, I produced a training many years ago called How to Win in the Game of Prospecting. And that initial training that I did, which is actually the very first training that I produced on audio CD, was a look back at that point of my 16-year career and how did I go from, stuttering, sweaty, nervous wreck who couldn't recruit hardly anybody to being one of the top recruiters in every company I built after that. And so that was like going through a number of these 5 critical elements actually that I talk about in that course. One of those is this concept of recording yourself. Like, you, for example, if you're talking to somebody, having a conversation with an individual, and you say something, so we've all done this, like you said something, and then you catch yourself and you realize, well, what I just said wasn't nice or wasn't cool or whatever, but you can't really take it back, and you could say, you could say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Let me rephrase my statement or my question, and try to make good on something that you said. But other times we do things and we don't know why a prospect went cold or why we did something and all of a sudden their interest was piqued. And in fact, like if we look at most, I don't remember where I read this. There was an analysis on like a bunch of like thousands of salespeople who had a high performing month one month and they had a low performing month the next month, and it wasn't based on the season changing, like going from a high season to a low season. It was within the same season, yet they had a low production month the next month and they couldn't recreate what they did the prior month because they couldn't really recall or remember or replicate what it was they did the previous month. So what you want to do in this process of improving is be able to replicate or repeat the things that are working, and I'm going to, and I'll talk about this in another episode, and then not do the things that aren't working. And so, like for example, when I do one-on-one coaching with people, one element to my coaching, if I'm doing prospecting coaching, is having you either make live calls in front of me or record calls, and then when we're on the phone together, you're playing the call, and I'm hearing both sides of the conversation, and I'm like, okay, stop right there. Let me listen to this. Okay, do you hear what you just said? Let me go back and let's replay that again. And for you to pick up on flaws that you might have. Now, this is an expert reviewing someone who's seeking to improve. You can do the same thing for yourself. It's not going to be as good as you having an expert review what you're doing, but you can listen to yourself and be able to pick up on things where you can make an improvement. Even to this day, as a seminar speaker or trainer on stage, I always get a copy of the presentation that I did so that I can review it. And when I review it, a lot of times I'll tell stories to, to teach a lesson, for example, and to do it in a story format. And sometimes I'll make something up while I'm up on stage, or a thought will come to me and I'll incorporate that kind of on the fly into a story teaching a lesson. And I've done it where sometimes it's like the audience is laughing, or you can see them leaning forward, or you can see that the message was well received. And then there's other times I do it and, well, that one kind of fell, well, that didn't really work as good as I thought it might have worked. And maybe it was a joke that I threw out that I didn't get as much laugh as I thought it, So what I'm then able to do is if I did something new and it worked really well, I'm like, okay, well, let me analyze that and see if I can repeat that and continue to do that. Or, there's times where I've made points and then I reiterate the point because I think it's an important point to reiterate, and then I reiterate, and then I'm like, well, I could have probably stopped at 2. And so the next time, and then I do it differently in the future. But if I didn't have the recording, then I wouldn't have the opportunity to review. And so there's all sorts of different apps that you can use to review and record your conversations. You don't have to do this with all of them, but I think this is a great opportunity if it is your desire to improve, and like this it's important for you to get better. I can promise you this: any of the things that I'm going to talk to you about during this series will all help you to improve, but it's your balls in your court as to whether you do it or not. Like, I can sit here and talk to you until I'm blue in the face about the value of recording and the feedback that you get from it and the improvements that you can make as a result of it. But if you never do it, then it's never going to happen. I will tell you this, and some of you guys, if you followed me for a period of time, have heard this story, perhaps on stage, for example, or something. But the first time the value of recording was a spotlight in my face about how valuable it was actually in speech class in college, which is a class that I almost failed, funny enough, like in being, a speaker. But I had to talk about a pencil on stage. Or not, it was actually not on stage, it was in front of the class, and we were on VHS on camera. So for 60 seconds, you had to talk about an object. In my case, it was a number 2 yellow Ticonderoga pencil, like the stuff that we had in school. And I got up there, and I'm talking about this sleek pencil, and this really soft, fluffy eraser, and this number 2 lead, and this beautiful green, shiny lettering Ticonderoga, which it means whatever, I have no idea. And I got done, I walked off, I crushed that. And then the next day, we had to sit there and watch all of the presentations and get feedback. And so when I watched it, in the moment, I thought I crushed it. But then afterwards, I'm looking at it, I'm like, I didn't crush it. I was like, wait a minute, what happened? I said pencil, and that was pretty much my presentation. I was appalled, but it was at that moment that I was able to realize how many ands and ums and uhs and and likes and and I will still do it occasionally, but I don't do it to the level that I did do it. And had I not had that epiphany, that moment from recording, I would have never been able to make that improvement, because that recording gives you direct feedback. And so if you've never done this before, if it's not a regular part of your personal process for becoming exceptional at this craft, then I think it should be. Same, whether it's a presentation that you're giving live, reviewing your Facebook Live, same thing. Reviewing, like, I'll do a Facebook Live and then I'll watch my own Facebook Live, especially if it's an important one that I was doing, to review it. Or if I'm doing a Zoom training, I'll review the recording of the Zoom training. If it was a live business overview that I was doing, I'll recap and review that. And there's just little areas where you can pick up on it. And even if you're a novice, you can pick up on things. Now, if you were having an expert look at that or review it, they're going to be able to see things and pick up on things you'll never be able to pick up on. And so that's like the next level of taking a recording and then having somebody review or recap it that has way more experience than you. It's kind of like, I know I've used a golf example a bunch of times, but I understand the mechanics of a golf swing. Okay? I've played golf long enough to understand the basic mechanics of a golf swing. Now, whether I can execute the mechanics or not is another thing. But there are times where I feel like I'm executing the mechanics, but then, and I've done this on video, and I'm like, it looks like I am, but then I have a golf coach who's an expert, who's a pro, and he's like, look, here's, and then he can make little adjustments that even with my eyes, which are not novice eyes in golf, but I don't know, medium to above average, I guess, even then I can't pick up on it, but an expert can. So there's just a high value in you guys taking the time to record yourself. But if you never record yourself, how are you going to know what you sound like? How do you know what your presentation's like? Or how do you know, if prospects are constantly turned off by you, how do you know why? Same thing even in a chat conversation or a text message thread. You can kind of go back and recap it and say, oh, I could see where, I could have done that differently. Or maybe an expert's going to say, look, boom. Like, I can tell you right now, if I was coaching you and I saw your little text conversation, or I was listening to you on audio, and I could stop you and I could find out exactly where the flaws are, because I've done this, for so long. But that's, these are little things that are going to help you to improve. And again, if you're here because you want to improve, because you want to achieve prospecting mastery, right? So anyhow, love you guys. Appreciate you. Thanks for being here. If you're on my YouTube channel, appreciate you guys. Appreciate my podcasters listening to me on audio. Love a review from you guys. If you're able to do that, that'd be great. If you want to get the rest of the story, other elements to this, come on over to toddfalcone.com/episode 171. We'll see you next time.